Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Kimberly Dondo, Digital Content Manager. And in this week's Weekend Essay Podcast, we have reporter Jean-Baptiste Andrieux commenting on the ever-evolving landscape of ESG. Take it away, JB.
The concept of ESG has gained in importance over the past decade. So much so that it's got to the point where it is said to become a standard rather than an exclusion filter. Since I joined Money Marketing, it is a topic I've greatly explored, sometimes at the expense of other teams. It has undeniably been one of the most important issues in the industry, if not the most important one in recent times. Yet, I believe that some questions remain unanswered. A common debate is about trying to define ESG. This acronym can have a completely different meaning depending on who you talk to. Let us consider the letter E of ESG, for instance, which stands for environment. To some people, it will mean investing sustainably, while to others, it will mean having a positive impact on the environment. There is, in my understanding, a subtle difference between the two. Sustainable means investing in a way that does not harm the environment, whereas impact is about investing in businesses that actively improve the environment. Can we reconcile these two views? The first group might shy away from ESG if we accept the notion of impact as a proper definition of the E in ESG, whereas the later group would consider sustainable as a drop in the C. The S in ESG is even more complex because they are even more viable in the perception of what a social issue is. Once you have set up a list of social issues, the problem is then that you have to choose your priorities. For example, some people might want to focus on addressing poverty, while others might consider supporting diversity and inclusion as more important. As for the G, it is a less discussed letter in the acronym. From what I understand, it is also the least controversial of the three aspects. Good governance is, I believe, easier to define. It is mostly about how a company treats its employees, stays away from immoral activities, and rewards its shareholders. Broadly speaking, the issue with ESG is the absence of standards. This will change in the future as the Financial Conduct Authority is looking to create a clearer framework. For now, I would argue the industry in general considers anything that targets additional outcomes besides pure financial returns more or less as ESG. Aside from the issues with defining the term, I believe that ESG is going to face a range of challenges going forward. First of all, it is now facing its first test. It tends to be associated with the growth side of the stock market. Although growth has been favored over the past few years, the market is now tilting toward value. There is, of course, a debate on whether ESG is also compatible with value, but for now, ESG investment is more commonly associated with growth. In the current economic climate, funds with an ESG tilt have been underperforming. The question is now whether investors are going to vote with their feet or stay true to their moral commitments. I tend to believe that there is always a discrepancy between what people say and what people do, especially if their money is involved. Obviously, the market will sooner or later flip back to growth. With several European countries rethinking their energy policies, there is no doubt that new opportunities will arise. There is, however, something I've learned after occasionally recovering the pension industry. People do not naturally have a long-term perspective and tend to neglect the pension pots. While ESG funds might recover in a few months or years, I would not be surprised if many will get off the train in the coming months. I suppose this is especially true for non-advised investors who have no voices to challenge the views of the moment. Secondly, I believe the ongoing events in Eastern Europe have brought a shift in paradigm. I recently mentioned an interview CTAM carried out with Credit Suisse Global Chief Investment Officer Michael Strobeck in a Behind the Headlines article I wrote. In the interview, Strobeck noted that we are moving toward a multipolar world. This view is by no means unique. In 2016, the World Economic Forum forecast the emergence of a handful of global powers in its 8 predictions for the world in 2030. If we travel further back in time, this is also something Samuel Huntington foresaw in 1996 in his controversial essay Clash of Civilizations in response to Francis Fukuyama's The End of History and the Last Man. Whereas Fukuyama saw the Western liberal democracy as a final form of human government and the unavoidable evolution for any human society, Huntington believes that the world would fragment in multiple blocks along cultural lines. While it is questionable that the world is fracturing in cultural blocks, we are indeed seeing the emergence of competing blocks. This will surely make international cooperation even harder than it already is. Environmental initiatives often highlight that projects such as net zero need to be global, but I'm not sure that competing rivals will be too keen on helping each other. COP26 was disheartening for many observers, as several major nations showed little eagerness to make strong commitments. I doubt it is going to get any better in the future with a more partisan world. Further questions remain, such as the adoption of ESG in the US. While it is the largest stock market in the world, the US has not embraced ESG to the same extent as Europe. ESG has a big potential for growth in America, but environmental issues remain controversial across the pond. Another crucial issue will be the adoption of ESG in emerging markets, which come with both opportunities and challenges. While ESG is here to stay, it will be a steeper path than what I previously believed.
Thanks, JB, for another illuminating Weekend Essay podcast. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.